So, what if I told you that one of the absolute strangest disasters in American history started with, well, something you probably pour over your breakfast? It's a crazy question, right? But what if a totally common, seemingly harmless pancake syrup
Literally destroyed a neighborhood? And I'm not talking about a slow, sticky mess on your kitchen counter. We are talking about a deadly, catastrophic event that completely leveled a city street.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're unpacking the day molasses became a killer, America's strangest disaster. We're going to uncover the true story of the Great Molasses Flood of 1919. And as you'll see, the most disturbing part isn't necessarily how it happened, but all the red flags that were completely ignored before it did.
All right, let's dive right into this. Chapter 1, The Ticking Time Bomb, set in Boston's North End. Picture this. It's 1919, and the North End is not some quiet suburb. It's a bustling, densely packed industrial hub. You've got streets filled with factories, warehouses, railways, and just hardworking folks trying to make a living. But looming right over the waterfront was this massive, 50-foot-tall steel storage tank owned by the United States Industrial Alcohol Company. Now, this beast held millions of gallons of industrial-grade molasses, which they used to make alcohol. But this colossal structure, it was hiding a fatal secret.
You see, the tank was leaking. It's true. People living nearby could actually hear the metal groaning. They literally watched the thick syrup seeping out from the seams. But instead of fixing a clearly compromised structure, the company took a terrifying shortcut. Get this. They just painted the steel dark brown to camouflage the leaks. That's it. So the tank just kept running, stuffed with millions of gallons of heavy liquid, groaning under all that immense pressure.
Chapter 2, The Wave Hits Boston. The date is January 15th, 1919. It was actually an unusually warm winter afternoon for Boston. Ordinary people, kids, they were just out enjoying the weather. But then, right around 12:30, this deep, terrifying rumbling started echoing through the streets. Now, some folks initially thought, oh, it's just the rumble of an elevated train. Well, it wasn't. That enormous steel tank was literally tearing itself apart, and it all climaxed in a violent, catastrophic explosion that just shredded the metal.
2.3 million gallons. To put that into perspective, that is enough heavy, dark molasses to fill multiple Olympic swimming pools, just violently expelled right into the streets of Boston. It didn't just pour out slowly like from a bottle. It exploded outward and formed this towering, inescapable tsunami of thick liquid, hurtling directly toward the neighborhood.
This wave crushed absolutely everything in its path. We're talking brick buildings shattered in an instant, vehicles totally pulverized. It smashed a nearby firehouse and even violently twisted the solid steel beams of the elevated railway. Anyone who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time was swept up, trapped in this chaotic, suffocating sludge. I mean, this wasn't a movie special effect. This dark wave tore through the streets with a heavy, inescapable force.
Chapter 3, A City in Ruins and the Human Toll.
When that violent wave finally settled down, the fast-paced destruction gave way to a really quiet, devastating horror. The streets were just coated in this sticky, impenetrable sludge. And the victims, they weren't just numbers on a page. These were factory workers, delivery drivers, firefighters, and heartbreakingly, children, including 2 10-year-olds. The disaster didn't care about who you were or what you did for a living. It trapped anyone in its path, completely indiscriminately.
When it was all over, the toll was grim. 21 people dead and around 150 injured. And for the survivors and rescuers, the nightmare was really just starting. Imagine wading waist-deep through sticky, dense wreckage for days, just struggling through dark syrup and debris. They were searching for victims who were so heavily coated in molasses that even identifying them became this nearly impossible, heartbreaking task. The cleanup was a massive, exhausting operation. Chapter 4. Sabotage or negligence. The investigation begins.
So, staring at a completely ruined neighborhood, investigators obviously demanded answers. I mean, how does a massive, heavily reinforced industrial steel tank just randomly explode in the middle of a Tuesday? Well, the company immediately went on the defensive. They claimed it was radical sabotage. We have to remember this was a time of intense political fear, so they argued some radical group must have blown the tank up with a bomb. But as investigators actually sifted through that twisted metal, they quickly shifted away from dramatic sabotage toward a much more disturbing reality: severe industrial negligence.
The truth was right there in the ruins.
First, the steel used to build the tank was fundamentally way too thin to bear the weight. On top of that, the tank had never even been properly tested with water before they filled it to the brim. And honestly, perhaps the most shocking part? The guy tasked with overseeing the construction entirely lacked the necessary engineering qualifications. Seriously. So this wasn't some mysterious attack. It was a deeply flawed, completely preventable disaster.
Chapter 5. The Fight for Accountability. The Lawsuits.
The surviving victims and those grieving families flat out refused to accept this disaster as just some unavoidable accident. They banded together and took the fight straight to the courts. We're talking over 100 lawsuits filed against the company, all centering on one really powerful question. Was this an unavoidable tragedy, or was someone actually responsible? What followed became one of the most closely watched, exhausting legal battles in Massachusetts history, all fighting to prove that a corporation couldn't just walk away from destroying a neighborhood. And you know what? After years of intense public scrutiny and exhausting legal proceedings, the verdict was monumental. The company was held strictly responsible. They were legally forced to pay for the devastation they caused. It proved that corporate negligence, choosing to literally paint over leaks rather than fix thin steel, carried a direct, undeniable cost.
Chapter 6. The Legacy. Why this matters today.
This bizarre disaster actually completely shifted how the modern world approaches construction. It influenced decades of engineering reviews. In fact, the rigorous safety requirements that protect the buildings and bridges we use today, a lot of them exist precisely because of this tragedy in Boston. It leaves us with a pretty stark reminder. When people ignore small failures long enough, eventually, those failures become catastrophic. A flood of molasses might sound crazy, but 21 people died because of an ignored warning sign. So it really makes you wonder, what small failures are being painted over in our world today? Thank you for exploring this explainer with us. Keep questioning and keep learning.